Just a follow-up question on that. The word in the question is dependence. It seems to imply like an unhealthy thing. Like there's too much dependence on too few people. That kind of a thing. There would be something unhealthy.
Yeah. Well, I would maintain that with that as a definition, that almost every single body of religious believers in the world, a huge percentage, we'll say, are in an unhealthy circumstance because somebody's name's on the sign, it's on the bulletin, it's on the cassette tape, it's their full picture on the back of the book, and that's where people get their identity from. That's their source of life and identity. And so there is an unhealthy identification with mere men in very, very many circumstances. If the pastor's not here, we can't do anything. And even the cell group teaching is, you better not teach, it'll just get confusing, it'll end up in heresy. Let's just reflect on what the pastor taught and go over his notes and his outline and a prescribed curriculum that's been determined to be healthy for you. It's just a fearfulness that something will get out of hand if someone else isn't controlling the whole deal. And most of religious Christendom is in that situation where it's a very unhealthy dependence. If their, quote, pastor didn't show up on Sunday with no warning and didn't come back, and in fact none of the other people that were on staff or in that, if none of them showed up, would God still speak that morning? If all the official people and the expected people weren't there, would God get His way? Would He teach, instruct, correct, rebuke, encourage? Would there really be an avalanche of God's Word come forth? And probably not, because people have been trained to be an audience. And anytime there's a clergy, there will be a laity. And anytime there's a laity, there is an unhealthy dependence on mere men as their intermediate between them and God. And the holy man has been brought on staff to bridge the gap, this huge gap between me and God. Again, was it an unhealthy dependence on Peter when they went to another town to get him? Was it an unhealthy dependence where they laid money at the apostles' feet to be distributed as any would will? Was it an unhealthy dependence when they brought Ananias before Peter, and Sapphira then was brought in before Peter? You can almost picture him sitting there at the head of the room, in a chair, and people gather on both sides and they bring him forward. It's like, is that unhealthy dependence? Well, obviously not. That wasn't. But there certainly is a way that is practiced in the majority of Christendom today that is unhealthy. When Peter was in prison, they didn't just fall apart. They went on. If John and Peter took off to Samaria, or Barnabas took off to Antioch, hundreds of miles away, life didn't fall apart. In fact, when the 15,000 people left Jerusalem in Acts 8, the 12 apostles stayed behind, is what it said. That all except the apostles left. And so there was something about their organic life together where they were very visible men that brought great amounts of revelation, wisdom, and truth into people's lives. They were devoted to the apostles' teaching, it said. Well, is that unhealthy dependence on? Well, it could be. If you pull the apostles out of the picture, if you pull the teachers, if you pull those that are functioning in the gifts of leadership or whatever out of the picture, and then everybody flounders, then you've got a big mess on your hands. If you stopped having meetings, beginning right now, you never had another worship service, Bible study, nothing. You just totally terminated everything that holds your particular group of believers together in terms of planned meetings on the calendar, time and space and place, sorts of things. If you terminated all those things, what would be left? If nothing's left, you have a very unhealthy dependence on mere men. If what's left grows and prospers in the integrity of the church, the entrances and exits, as it says in Ezekiel, the house of God, all of that's intact and prospered, and teaching grows and multiplies with no meetings whatsoever, no staff whatsoever, with none of that in place, but the integrity of the church itself, nobody just wanders off and dies, falls through the cracks, then you're in business. Then you've got life as it was meant to be. But if you terminated all that stuff, if you got the courage to give it a try to find out, if you terminated all that stuff and nothing was left, then you don't have anything right now either. It's hard to say. And you have an unfortunate dependence on men that you probably don't even want and probably weren't even aware of that was there. The real thing prospers even without all the trappings. The thing that's been held together with bubble gum and baling wire and in our programs and all that kind of stuff, that'll fail if you remove the props. So think about that. That's a unhealthy dependence on men.